Hello, everybody. I'm Dan Hollifield, and welcome to Last Man Standing, the official after show for Stupid O'Clock. We were having a great time over there, but unfortunately, Joe Dog and John had to go to bed, and they won't be with us this evening. But that's all right. We got the absolutely incredible Bill Sarton here, artist.
What?
Yeah. Put the pen down. You're not drawing anymore. It's time to be live. Oh,
I do have something that I have to draw for somebody this week. It's not a paid commission either. I'm doing it gratis, but when we take our trips to Chicago, the people, very nice neighbors that live next door, they said if we have trash to put out and put the totes out, the garbage tote and the recycling tote out by the curb, that they would pull them back down into the driveway for us down where we keep them in the yard.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a son who I think is 10 or 11 now. He's grown like a weed, so I'm not sure exactly how old he is. And when we were there last Sunday, I was showing him all my sketches, and he was going through and identifying with the ones he liked, all the different superhero ones and all the Scooby-Doo and things that he knew about. Of course, there were others he didn't know about. Then he turned around and he looked at me. He said, "Do you draw anything new as far as characters and such?" I'm like, well, I said, I started doing this because I was drawing things to remind people about their childhood and things like that, because it was kind of a crummy time with COVID and everything else and people having to stay home. So that's why I was posting every day as opposed to a couple times a week or once a week or whatever. But I found out in our conversation that he likes this character called Captain Underpants.
Oh, yes, I've heard of that one.
Okay, yes, it's a very famous series of children's books that's been out for a while. Actually, my nephew, who's now 16, used to like Captain Underpants, and about 4 or 5 years ago when he was up here on summer vacation, I took him to the movie that was out at the time. But so before we left, Laura asked his mom, can we give Anthony something, to show our appreciation, because he was the one that coming over to do it every week. No, that's not necessary, but I think Anthony is going to get something.
There you go.
That I made, and it will be framed, and we just keep that a surprise for him. And that, which I know he doesn't do Facebook or anything, so I feel safe saying it on the show.
Yeah, and he wouldn't know about us on YouTube to be able to get there that way. Now, for those of you who are of a certain age, Captain Underpants is not to be confused with Diaper Man from the Mighty Heroes.
Right. Yeah, totally different.
Yeah. Different concept, different execution entirely. So, yep.
Yeah, one happened about 50 years earlier or more, 55 years or whatever.
I remember when Mighty Heroes was brand new, and I'm going, oh, Underdog's got competition now.
And I still occasionally post some of their cartoons in the Every Day is Saturday Facebook group.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing what just one image from one of the old, well, I'm saying old, but 60s cartoons. What memories that will provoke, because this is for some of us that was childhood.
Oh yeah.
And it was one of those times when all was right with the world, or as far as we knew. And Saturday morning was one of those times you get up before the sun, you turn on the TV and watch the test pattern until a Flash Gordon or a Buck Rogers serial episode came on, and then it was one of the really nice early Japanese animation cartoons. Is either Astro Boy or Eighth Man or one right after the other,
Mhm.
and then it went into the classic black and white era, uh, Fleischer Brothers Popeye, with some of the most surreal animation ever. Very, very fluid backgrounds that it's like, oh, so y'all have done some drugs.
One of my contacts that I get some of my material from for the Everyday Saturday group had been posting a lot of the old Betty Boop
Hmm.
that
Same
would
era, yeah.
have um, the man himself who sang Minnie the Moocher, and they did
Cab
a
Calloway.
Cab
Yep.
Calloway, and they did a Betty the Boop, um, to all intents and purposes, video for Minnie the Moocher, utilizing Betty Boop, and you saw Cab Calloway in there.
Hmm.
And earlier today, I was back at that same place, and Betty Boop had another one that she did with Louis Armstrong. And he
Oh,
came in there and actually made a physical appearance of his
yeah.
real self in the cartoon, just like how Cap Calloway was.
Do
But
you
it
remember what
what?
song that was?
No, I don't, because
I can remember the cartoon, but I can't remember what the song was.
yeah, um, I would have to get back to you on that because I didn't get a chance to watch it. The Minnie the Moocher has always been my favorite Cab Calloway song, but
Hmm.
or Heidi Ho song, what a lot of people
Yeah,
know it by. But
yeah.
uh,
St. James Infirmary was a good one.
yeah,
Although
and
that one's a little, well, I hate to say a little bit more obscure, because it's the same time period and it's the same quality of work. It just
mm,
absolutely wonderful. Whoever was performing it, um, up until Hugh Laurie did it, I don't think it's ever been done better. Um, and Hugh Laurie did it live with a thing where he was getting to show off that he could actually play a piano and not just be a comedian. And
I think I saw a pretty decent version of that song being played on. I want to say it was during the second or third season of Saturday Night Live.
spot on, spot on, Cameron. Yeah,
Yeah.
when the Sci-Fi Channel first came,
Hmm.
yep, they had a lot of stuff that they unfortunately stopped doing as
Oh,
time went on.
I used to watch The Incredible Hulk and Kolchak the Night Stalker on
Oh,
Sci-Fi back in the day, but
they had the 1970s era Doctor Who
hmm,
with uh, Tom
Tom
Baker.
Baker. Yep.
Hmm. And that was you know when you could only see Doctor Who on a PBS station late at night, and it was like the lineup was something like The Prisoner, Doctor Who, and then Blake Seven,
Mm,
and it just kept getting later and later and later. And the PBS stations did not have a big enough budget to stay current with
yeah.
the Doctor Who.
I
But they
remember
were able to
when
go. They were able to go back, yeah, and
our
pick up.
local PBS station, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, actually replaced Doctor Who. And although I would later find out what a
Mm,
great show that was, and the book's even better,
yep,
um, I was just
yeah.
livid because Doctor Who was getting replaced.
Oh, I was too. I was too. And we were obviously on different PBS stations because we
Right.
were in
Yeah.
different states. Um,
Yep.
there were some
Um,
friends. Some friends of mine had actually from different. I think one of them was in North Carolina, and he was able to record early uh, First Doctor and Second Doctor episodes,
yeah.
whereas my local PBS station would not go back that far, but they would play the John Pertwee Third Doctor episodes leading up
Hmm.
to Tom Baker, and they kept showing the original Tom Baker over and over again, and then they finally got the budget to add some of the later seasons of that in, and then the Peter Davison and the Sylvester McCoy, right up until the great hiatus, where
Hmm.
actually production stopped on classic era Doctor Who, and we had to wait uh, 12 years or so before the Fox TV movie with Paul McGann came on, and people were so upset because it was more Americanized and less traditional British Doctor Who, and I could not understand that.
Well, the
It was
the two
back.
doc the two British Doctor Who movies from the '60s
Hmm. Yeah.
that
Uh,
had
um,
was it Christopher Lee or Peter Cushing?
Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing. Okay,
Yep.
I actually saw those on our PBS chase station uh, in North Carolina, and we did have. I'm not too sure about the first Doctor episodes, but I know from second Doctor on we did.
Hmm. And
Baker was still my favorite, and would always be my favorite. I got back into Doctor Who when Tennant and Eccleston and all them in there, but then Matt Smith
hmm
and this
that
girl
was.
right back. Oh well, she's somewhere. I know she's right here, but out of camera right at the moment. But
Mhm.
um, Karen Gillan, but
Yep.
that's the ones that hooked me again.
Come along, Pond. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was when that happened in 2005. I was so grateful that Doctor Who was back in production,
Hmm.
and uh, I really wished that Paul McGann had been able to have a series rather than just the movie, even though
Hmm.
he had the movie, and then later on in time for the anniversary, he had a mini episode that was really excellent, and then Peter Davison came back for a mini episode with David Tennant, which was a really nice tie back to the fans of the classic series. So
Hmm.
that was great, but um, a lot of people, unfortunately, are not willing to go back and go through the lower budget special effects sort of uh, thing that defined the classic era, because shoestring budget used to be able to describe Doctor Who as masterpiece theater acting with a dark
Hmm.
shadows budget.
And that's just it. So many friends of mine in grade school and even high school, both when we came up here, uh, diehard Star Trek fans, diehard Star Wars fans, all that. And Star Trek didn't have the best budget in the world when that series was out, but
Mhm.
they would look at Doctor Who and how can you get into that? That's so horrible. That's but and I'm like, no, get beyond the set. Get
Hmm.
get into the actual characters. Get into the actual stories and that,
Yeah.
and then you'll get it. Then some did, some didn't. Well, some just refused to even watch it. But
Well, the thing is, with along with very many other low budget shows, and not only from England but from the United States, the acting was top rate.
mm,
They took the stories seriously and had fun with them. And if you could get beyond the cheesy special effects and the wobbly props and the sets, you just got it, and it was wonderful.
right.
And then 2005, a decent budget came along, and the same class of actors, the same masterpiece theater class of actors came along to be not only the doctor but the companions and the villains and everything else. The special effects are better. The per show budget is much better,
Yeah.
and it's only continued to improve. And I'm looking forward to the few remaining specials from Jodie Whittaker's um, Doctor, and I'm going to hate it when she regenerates into whoever is going to follow her, because I wish she could get another season. I really do.
Yeah,
She's
and
a fine
I
act.
have not seen any of those with her in it yet, so that's one that I gotta get caught up on and
She
that.
is
But
she is a fine actress.
mm,
She had at least two or three really good scripts per season, but the average scripts did not serve her well.
yeah, and I've heard both sides that to where it it's basically you either love her or hate her. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I hate that it does,
Well,
but everything that I've read and two, I think yes, it the best actor or the best actress uh, can only do so much with a really really horrible script.
hmm now Vincent Price did wonders back in the day with some really horrible scripts, but
Oh yeah, look at all the Roger Corman stuff they did in the
oh,
'60s
exactly,
with him
exactly,
and Peter Lorre and
yeah.
Lee and Cushing and all that, and they took what would have been absolutely horrible, horrible movies and made them cult classics just simply because Corman had the foresight. Hey, let's get all these old
let's get
people
the
in here.
let's get people to know what they're doing in here and make
Yeah,
it.
and a lot of them they were resurrecting their careers, and that
Yeah,
sadly Bela Lugosi didn't get it the way the others did,
this is true.
and but he there were a lot of things going on with that. I want to back up a minute before we get too far removed from the subject of
Yeah.
about 10 minutes ago. You were commenting when we were talking about the cartoons about some of the Fleischer ones being very surreal. And I wondered if you ever saw some of the really early Disney. Some were the Silly Symphony ones, but a lot of them, particularly just the regular Disney
Yes. Yeah.
cartoons back in the days, that were just as surreal as a lot of the Fleischer.
That seemed to be the way that the artists and the, well, I don't want to say the voice actors, because they did a straight job when there
Hmm.
were actually speaking voices. Uh, and the music that they picked out for them, the cartoons to be animated to,
Hmm.
it all kind of blended together. But yeah, you're exactly right. That seemed to be the kind of style of animation that almost everyone was doing, was very, very surreal and occasionally um, beyond belief silly, but still in the context of that particular cartoon, you took it at face value because that was the universe that the characters were in.
Right.
So
A
yeah,
couple times a month in the Every Day is Saturday group, I'll post specifically on a Sunday some of the old um, Wonderful World of Disney shows, some of the hour-long ones, some of the which back when they were called the Wonderful World of Color.
hmm I remember that
Um,
well.
and I will throw in some cartoons, which typically will be, the Fab Five of
Yeah,
the Disney characters, but I will draw some stuff back from the 20s and 30s and pull out some really old stuff every once in a while. Um, Even though I always say that the cartoons got to be from the 50s through the 80s, but hey, it's my group, damn it.
yeah,
I'll do
really.
what I want.
You're in total control here.
Well, I'm sole dictator, even though I'm minus the Hitler mustache, and but I don't do it as a regular thing, but just when something very interesting comes up. Uh, and I used to do that every Sunday, but see, I post little tidbits here and there to keep um, current, fresh content in the group throughout the week. But then Saturdays, because of the name of the group and what it's all about, Saturdays when I really go full blown on all the old cereal toy commercials, the old PSAs, and then your fair share of cartoons and live action Saturday morning stuff. Next week I got, well, I did the first appearance of Don Knotts from October of 1972 on the new Scooby movies.
Yeah.
And he makes one more appearance the following month of the same year. Um, I guess that's what he was contracted to do through Hanna-Barbera. And so I'll post that one next week. But then I put in all kinds of tidbits, a lot of stuff that you would know. Uh, the Banana Splits
Mhm.
hour, and um, like I said, the new Scooby movies. I did the Hair Bear bunch. But then I also will pull out. Do you remember a cartoon that was actually a primetime cartoon in the early 70s called Wait Till Your Father Gets Home?
Yes, I do. And that had a lot of very well-known voice actors in it, actually. People
Tom
I knew.
Bosley,
Yeah.
Jack Burns, Alan Melvin. Um, it goes on every week. And then well, basically for anybody watching now live or on the rerun, Wait Till
Yeah.
Your Father Gets Home was the animated version of All in the Family.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
it except
some, some of the jokes were a little bit more accessible.
right, but they would they would use all the terminology that was being used uh, on both sides of the coin, and back in the early 70s. And Jack Burns, who was more or less the Archie
Yeah.
character, but he wasn't the father in there, where Tom Bosley was the father. Jack Burns was the bigoted neighbor.
Yeah.
That which, and of course, those things. Who's Jack Burns? Well, Jack Burns was the replacement of Don Knotts on the later color episodes of the Andy Griffith Show. And then he also was part of the comedy team with Avery Schreiber back in the
Oh,
day.
yeah.
Actually,
Burns and Shriver. Yes, indeed. I remember them well. Huh? Yeah.
they
Huh?
were
Yeah. Huh? Yeah.
awesome. Oh yeah, and well, they got that. I don't know if Burns did that first on the Andy Griffith Show with Andy, or if he was doing that with Avery Schreiber first and then did that,
I,
because
I
Andy
think,
Griffith Show, it had
I,
been like 66 to 68 season.
for some reason, back in the day, I thought that was something he brought to the character on Andy Griffith that he'd been doing in his own stand-up.
Well,
So,
I know I've seen them on episodes of the Ed Sullivan Show from the mid, maybe late 60s, but and
yeah.
it could have were and the episodes that I saw were probably almost virtually about the same time as the Andy Griffith Show, so that didn't really help matters much. But
Well,
yeah, that show was wonderful, and you had the older dropout deadbeat son who was
mhm.
kind of like the meathead. You had the daughter who was kind of like Gloria, but she didn't really act like Gloria too much.
More
And
rebellious.
then there
Yeah.
was a younger son
Hmm.
that he was kind of his own character. He almost kind of reminded me of the character that Danny Bonaducci played on The Partridge Family, where he was always scheming on making money and stuff, And then, of course, the wife was kind of timid through most of the time, almost like an Edith Bunker. But yeah, the episode I posted in there today, it was basically about minorities.
Yeah.
And the place where Tom Bosley worked, they had a driver delivering goods to different places. That the guy was supposed to have retired 5 years earlier, and he had horrible eyesight, and he kept wrecking the truck. So they finally had to let him go, and then it was up to Tom Bosley to hire somebody to replace this Abe who was working with him forever, but he said, you need to retire. And so that's when everybody was coming down saying, okay, you need to hire a black person, you need to hire an Indian, Native American, you need to hire a Chicano, or
Mhm.
and all these people from these different groups, different minority groups, were coming and pressuring them to do it. And then, of course, Jack Burns next door, being a head of a quasi-military survivalist group, had a candidate of his own that he was pushing them into hiring.
Mhm.
And it was causing Tom Bosley all kinds of problems, because they were saying, well, you didn't hire the black guy, Daddy, you're a racist. No, I'm not. I didn't hire anybody yet, because I went through 6 people, and well, you need to hire one of every one. Well, I don't need 6 people to drive one truck. I need one person to drive one truck. And he's trying to explain it in a common sense fashion, but he's getting it from his liberal children and from the bigoted next door neighbor on the
Yeah.
other side. And even the wife is kind of, who's normally timid, is kind of giving it to him as well. And she's wanting him to hire her younger brother or nephew or something or other, who worked for him before but ended up stealing from him and kept quitting all the time. So
Mhm.
not not really a good candidate either. And of course, at the end of the episode, he ends up hiring the guy who he let go of that should have retired, and
Yep.
just to save. But the whole half hour is a trip through what was going on at the time back in 1972 when this episode aired, and everything that was going on against minorities, everything that was going on about labeling people if you didn't do exactly like they thought you should, concerning minorities on both. And it's basically a fingerprint episode of All in the Family.
Yeah.
Back in the day, and but much tamer.
I remember a couple of others from the same time period that were also nighttime, primetime cartoons, like Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. There was one, I remember the title was Roman Holidays.
Yep.
And then there was another one. I want to say the main character's voice was somebody pretending to be Walter Matthau, but it was about guys on a football team.
Oh,
and their families.
Where's Huddles?
Okay.
Yeah.
And
he did, and the guy who was the next door neighbor with the cat was voiced by Paul Lynde.
Oh yeah, Paul Lynde got to do a lot of great things. Oh yeah.
Well, he was, I mentioned the Hair Bear Bunch earlier, and he was the one of the voices on there of the zookeeper, Mr. Peevely, and the guy Botch, who was the assistant to Mr. Peevely, was what's his name from Car 54? Where are you?
Oh,
I'm wanting to say Joey Ross, but that doesn't sound right.
No, it doesn't. I know you're not talking about.
You had Herman Munster on there that played the one,
Ed Wynn,
and then Fred Gwynn, and of course you even had Grandpa Munster playing the at the police station, but his Fred Gwynn's partner on Car 54, Where Are You, and Mr. Botch, Mr. Peevely's assistant on the Hair Bear Bunch, was played by this same guy. And I'm just mortified that I don't remember his name, but he would always go, ooh, ooh.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Mr. Peevely. Yeah, he was hilarious.
I know exactly who you're talking about. I cannot remember the fellow's name.
I'll think of it before too long, but a lot of the Hanna-Barbera stuff was really, even the ones that actually gained fame from just being voices of Hanna-Barbera, you had Dawes Butler and John Stevenson. Well, Mel Blanc, predominantly Warner Brothers, but of course he was whatchamacallit too. He was always on Jack Benny. I know we talked about that earlier tonight.
I remember that. There was a sketch where they could not get the Tijuana Brass, and Mel Blanc came out with a bunch of guys and did a comedy routine. They were a Tijuana Brass cover band, basically.
Yeah. See. Yeah. What's his name? Psy. Just back and forth. And then of course on the radio show, when you would have, what was the car that Jack Benny drove? It was a certain.
Lord, it was an Edsel.
Well, it was like an Edzo, but there was a different name for it, and it was actually a legitimate car name too.
Hmm.
But it was one that predated it. That was out like in the 30s or 40s that only Jack Benny would buy because he was such a tightwad. And Mel Blanc did all the car noises,
Oh yeah.
sputtering and backfiring and everything else. And he was on that there. And we were talking about biographies. I was talking about Jack Benny's Sunday Nights at 7 biography, which is very good. And you had George Burns's biography, Gracie, uh, equally good, if not better. But Mel Blanc had one that he did with his son Noel Blanc, uh, about the same time that Gracie came out, called "That's Not All, Folks."
Oh
And he was still alive back then. This was probably a year and a half to 2 years before he passed away. And absolutely wonderful book. And the thing that got me the most was when he was in the hospital and could not voice the cartoons that were going on at the time. He kind of had the foresight that he was training his son Noel to do some of the voices and how to do them.
hmm
And of course, Noel would put his little spin on it, but he would predominantly try to do it, to make Foghorn Leghorn sound like Foghorn Leghorn, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that was
And,
actually modeled after a politician, a real
yeah,
life politician.
Senator Claghorn. It was a character on, I'm wanting to say either the Great Gildersleeve or Fibber McGee and Molly radio show.
For some
And
reason,
then
I'm going to go
that
for
character
Gildersleeve.
was, I know what you're talking about, but
Yeah, there was an
but
actual politician that
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
that.
and that was what Senator Claghorn was modeled off of.
Mhm.
But the way they did the voice for Senator Claghorn, the character in, and I think it was in the Great Gildersleeve, but I could be wrong, was the same way they wanted to do Foghorn Leghorn. And I guess eventually there's pictures in That's Not All, Folks, that show Mel Blanc in his hospital bed where he's actually able to talk and do some of the voice recordings. They moved the whole studio into his hospital bedroom. And there he is laying in the hospital bed with this great big boom microphone hanging over the front of him. And there's Noel sitting on the side of the bed. It's really something else. But I mean, he was very, very dedicated to his work
Mhm.
for Warner Brothers with that. You would think, oh, cartoons, well, that must have been just a side job and he did other things. Well, the other stuff was the side job, and the cartoon voicing, and
Yeah,
that was
voice
his
acting
real.
was his actual real job, and he
Oh
was
yeah, yeah.
very good at it. Very, very adaptable. There was a video retrospective about his career. I think it was called "Man of a Thousand Voices."
And that's what they referred to him as
Hmm.
because of Lon Chaney being the man of a
A
thousand
thousand
faces.
faces, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And they were actually interviewing him, and this was long before he was. I mean, this is while he was still. Uh, his health was still good, and he was still working
Mm-hmm.
uh, uh, full time. And he would go through and explain how he came up with each character's voice. There's, Bugs Bunny was uh, a mix of a Bronx voice and a Brooklyn voice or something, if I remember correctly. So he kind of blended them together to get Bugs's, uh,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say, iconic speech pattern,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And he would do that for every character he was playing. He would figure out what they were supposed to sound like, and nailed it every time that character came up in a script for him to do the voice acting for. And man was incredibly talented. Dawes Butler was no slouch either, for that matter.
Mm-mm.
Um,
My favorite Hanna-Barbera character has always been Yogi Bear.
mhm.
And my favorite Hanna-Barbera cartoon, not part of the 60s era that had Yogi and Huck and uh, all the rest of them, but would be the Hair Bear Bunch, simply because so much of that was based off of Yogi Bear or the Hillbilly Bears or whatever,
Yeah,
hearing Paul Rugg down
right.
there, and a lot of people thought the Hillbilly Bears were based off of the Beverly Hillbillies, and they really weren't. It was
No, no,
totally
the stories were not the same.
no, and
And
they never were, and they
the
you
characters were generally similar, but there wasn't a real Jethro character.
no,
The daughter
and
the daughter was very very clearly um, sort of Ellie Mae, but not quite.
I think that if you could base them on any other character, whether it be a TV show or movie or radio program, I would say they would be more closely based on Ma and Paul Kettle,
Yeah,
uh, with the movies that they used to do, more so than the Beverly Hillbillies. And that's
yeah,
simply
yeah.
because of the way the Paul Rugg character the from the Bears, Hillbilly Bears, the way he acted, the very slow, lethargic, always sleeping,
hmm
and
I I detected
excitable.
I detected a lot of Snuffy Smith cartoon or newspaper cartoons in
Mm,
that as well. Um, and that was back in the day when I was still a kid. If I noticed that, there might be something to it,
mm.
taking
And
inspiration from Barney Google and Snuffy Smith for the hillbilly sort of character.
mm-hmm. And King Features Syndicate that did the mid '60s era Barney Google, Snuffy Smith cartoons. They did Beetle Bailey, a lot of different ones. From they were basically pulling out of the Sunday comic strips and animating them, and they did a wonderful job with it. And that they tried to do some stuff. Um,
Oh, I remember some of those. And
in the late '70s, that was called the TV funnies or something to that effect, where you would have different, they had a whole stable of characters from Sunday comic strips like Alley Oop and Broomhilda and the Cats and Jammer Kids and that, and you
yeah,
would have different ones every week. And one of my favorites that you rarely ever saw in the TV Funnies Saturday morning cartoon was they also very briefly did Tom Ryan's Tumbleweeds uh,
yeah.
comic strip, and they brought that to life. And I've loved Tumbleweeds forever. And
I
when Tom
remember.
Ryan,
No, no. Keep going, keep going. It just sparked off a memory here. Um,
no, I was just going to say when Tom Ryan passed away, it was just so sad because I really thought that he was going to kind of resurrect those characters and bring them back.
mm,
And that, but of course, he never got the chance.
I remember very vaguely somebody tried to do uh, an occasional uh, Major Hoople / Our Boarding House cartoon,
Hmm.
and I love those from the Sunday Funnies.
Yeah.
Uh,
What was his
and
name? Jigs, wasn't it? Wasn't his
uh,
name Jigs,
there were two
the
guys.
main character?
There were two guys in. They were boarding in Major Hoople's house, and his
Hmm.
the major's wife was the absolute ruler of the domain.
Oh, of course.
And yeah, and then you had the two board jigs might have been one of them. I can't remember.
Yeah, I was thinking he was the one that always, he was the taller, heavy set one that wore the top hat or whatever all the time. I could be wrong. It's been a
Uh,
while since I've read one of them.
I remember both of the boarders being just plain ordinary guys, but if you had to reference them, they were kind of similar to a combination of some of the characters from King of the Hill,
Hmm.
uh, but much more articulate and plain spoken, better spoken. Just kind of, they got into hijinks, and the major was always wanting to go down to the pub for a beer, but you know, oh Lord, some of these things go back so far I can't even remember all the details. Um,
Well, that's just it. I mean, I think of ones. Oh,
Tin Pan Alley was another one back in the
yeah,
newspaper strips. Uh,
Henry.
Henry.
The boy with the red shirt on and the black shorts, he would always be getting into some sort of predicament, but he never spoke. He was a bald headed. He had a bald head. I've
Hmm.
actually drew a picture of him before, and I have him with my sketches. And but um, he did that. I'm reading something about our boarding house now. It says the series was written by Jerry Cady, 1903 to 1948. Patsy Moran had the role of Hoople's wife, Martha. Conrad Binion and Frank Bresci portrayed Hoople's precocious little nephew, little Alvin. Mel Blanc played the starboarder, Tiffany Twiggs. So, anyway, it's kind of goes on and on, but I won't.
Mm.
It gets a little long.
Yeah, we could go into all the details, but then that kind of sidetrack us from being able to traipse down memory lane about all these things. Um,
And the thing
okay.
about it is that if we bring up something and it brings up a wonderful memory for somebody, then instead of us giving away everything, and that is like kind of gets them motivated enough to, dig in, research something themselves, and
Hmm.
they might
I
find something to watch or something to read about it.
I remember when I was a kid, there was a Dick Tracy cartoon. It was very short episodes, and it had two or three characters in it. Joe Jitsu and
Hmm.
oh, what was the other one? There was another one. Um,
Joe Jitsu is the one I remember the most, and you never saw Dick Tracy go out on the call. He was always the one
he was
that would.
assigning things to his
Right.
subordinate detectives. Yeah.
You saw him behind the desk with the microphone in front of him, and he would be
Mhm.
calling Joe Jitsu to go take care
Well,
of this or somebody.
there
But
there
then
were
they
there
did
were a
have the
few
one
when it
episode.
there were a few where Tracy actually left the office, but they were few and far between.
Right. I think there was a different series that had him in it predominantly, but I know the one that you're talking about because that did come out in the mid '60s,
Mhm.
and
Really, really, really short episodes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They actually, we were talking about Bozo Circus,
Mm-hmm.
and that was one of the cartoons that was shown on Bozo Circus was Dick Tracy.
Mm-hmm. Now to go back into the newspaper strips of Dick Tracy, especially the Sunday morning full color strips.
Hmm.
Now, my favorite ones was always the Moon People, Moon Girl, and
Hmm.
the little anti gravity uh, platforms and the spaceships and all this other stuff, and um, uh, Bo Plenty, and
Hmm.
just it went on and on and on and on. Uh, they those stood out to me even more than the ones like Prune Face and Flat Tire.
Right.
When he was up against gangsters, and then when he was trying to help the Moon People um,
Well,
establish, yeah, it was.
Chester Gould went outside of the box on those
Mhm.
um,
But
stories.
that's it might have been back in the day some of my earliest experiences with what would later be classed as science fiction. Uh,
Hmm. Well, no
so
different than Edgar Rice Burroughs when
yeah, but I hadn't
with the
Tarzan.
Tarzan.
Tarzan was the only and Tarzan mostly from the Johnny Weissmuller movies was my exposure to Edgar Rice Burroughs back in the
Well,
day.
that was my original, and then that got me into the Sunday comic strips, and then the comics from, well, originally Dell Comics,
Hmm.
and trying to think of the other one that had them before Marvel and DC did their runs on them. But
Hmm.
and right now, I'm looking at something earlier tonight. It was an advertisement from a collectibles company called Entertainment Earth, and they have a series of action figures that they're producing right now. Some of which are a pre-order, and some of which are out already, and they're called Hacks, HACKS. Basically, it's a company that takes a traditional action figure body, uh, more of a like a plastic body,
Hmm.
and they'll duplicate, put different heads, different clothing and stuff like that. Not cloth clothing like these Mego style, well, this one's actually Figures Action Company for this Phantom, but they actually have a comic strip version of Phantom coming out. They have one of the Phantom Girl with both the purple wearing the cowl. Well, she wore red, where the Phantom wore predominantly purple.
Purple.
But some of the Frew comics, it shows them in blue or purple or
Hmm.
some or red. But Phantom Girl predominantly wore red, and then there's a different head scope, a spare head that you get with her of just showing she has the blonde hair with just the mask on. They also are coming out with the um, cartoon version, the Filmation cartoon version of Flash Gordon
Oh yeah.
with uh, a Flash Gordon, Ming the Merciless, and I think a Dr. Zarkov figure. And I've seen the Ming, the Merciless figure, and one other one already. I think it was at Walmart back there where all the video games and DVDs and that are. They have, a little area that has collectible figures and
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
all the pop vinyls that I love to hate. But
This is true. This is true.
I,
Uh, Hang on a
but
minute,
yeah,
Bill.
they're wonderful. And I can't wait. And they're 7-inch figures. They're going to be around $30. So it's very. Oh, and they're doing a Tarzan one that is not going to look like a Disney Tarzan. It's going to
Okay.
look like a comic strip Tarzan. So
Okay. Okay. I'm going to have to step away from the screen for a minute. If you want
okay.
to,
And I'm probably going to have to, let's see, I got 5 till 1 Central Time. I'm
yeah.
probably going to have to cut out in about 15, 20 minutes.
Okay. Not a problem. I'll be back as
Okay.
quick as I can. Just go ahead and vamp for all you're worth, and we'll pick it up. This has been a great thing about going down memory lane about uh, old comic characters, newspaper strips versus comic books versus the actual cartoons and whatnot. I would like to get your opinion on some of the filmation animation adaptations of some of these things that we just loved so much from the newspaper and comic books. But I will be right back.
All right. And while Dan's, I know it's not taking 3 steps, he's taking a few more on for this trip. But yeah, once again, anybody interested in these figures, and they have a whole bunch of different other series of figures. And once again, they're called hacks, and they're a 6-7 inch figure, and they come with their own base. It's just the base, I think, are all the same. They say hacks on the base, but they also come out with some standard hacks figures that you can do your own customizing. So if you say, oh, okay, this is great. Well, I want to do maybe Frank Miller Daredevil, or I want to do Moon Knight, or maybe something entirely different, maybe from the movie Dune or something, to where you want to be creative in customizing your own figure. These hacks figures are also sold as generic, basic male and female figures with various heads, hands in various forms and grips and fists and flat open hand, things like that you can buy to customize to make your own figure. And that's originally what I had planned on doing for a Tarzan figure. I'm very much been a Edgar Rice Burroughs Tarzan fan, and this figure, the Tarzan figure that they have out now, and they also have one of Lady Jane Clayton that's coming out too, that's on pre-order right now. But the Tarzan figure, I looked at the face, and the face is so reminiscent of Joe Jusko's version of Tarzan, which, if you've seen his paintings, are absolutely brilliant. And Joe, if you're watching, or Linda, or one of the many Juskos that I know from Facebook, this figure would probably make you smile. But the head sculpt for the Tarzan is very, 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 looks very much like Joe Jusko's version of Tarzan. And I was just telling them that the hacks figures, besides all of the ones that they're doing for Tarzan and Flash Gordon and some other ones that they're making themselves, they sell the regular generic male and female body figures with different head sculpts and hair colors and different hands, and that if you want to customize your own figure, maybe one of the characters from your books, Dan, and you say, hey, I want to make a figure. and that maybe just a place in your studio or whatever, and that this company makes it readily available that if you're creative in that way, that you can buy this stuff from them, and it looks very well made. So anyway,
I would enjoy that, except that I've run out of wall space to build bookcases on, much less to store any artwork. So
I was going to customize my own Tarzan figure simply because there's been several different Tarzan figures, and I have some of the Mego ones. There was one that they did called Tarzan Lord of the Apes or Lord of the Jungle. I forget which it was called. It was a run that was done some years ago that looked pretty good, pretty authentic, and true to the books and the comics, but the figures were not very well articulated. There were some issues in that, and sometimes you just want a well articulated figure, and then all of a sudden here they come out with this one already made, complete with his knife and his spear, and so you can't go wrong with that. But so I'll just end up buying it instead of trying to make my own.
Yeah, well, sometimes people will surprise you with what they put out that's so close to what you wanted in the first place, even though it's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But
I believe you had a question about filmation.
I wanted to ask you your opinion of the filmation animation, the cartoons. Now they had a Tarzan. It was basically it was obviously based on the drawing style based on the Ron Ely Tarzan, but the stories were closer to Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Oh yeah, they were probably the closest.
Lone Ranger and Tonto, and they had done some Marvel and DC comic characters as well. But they used the rotoscoping animation style like the Fleischer Brothers did. So the movements of the animation were really, really lifelike, even though it was obviously cell animation.
Yeah, what I loved my favorite obviously was Tarzan Lord of the Jungle, that Robert Ridgely voiced for him, and then of course he also voiced the Flash Gordon in the Flash Gordon filmation series, which that's a wonderful series too. If you like one, you're going to like the other, because the storylines and everything are just, they're of that era. I so dearly wished that Filmation, after seeing the Flash Gordon one that came out later than the New Adventures of Batman and Tarzan Lord of the Jungle and Lone Ranger and Tonto and Zorro and all those other ones, I think the Flash Gordon ones came out in 80 or 81. I thought, oh, good, maybe they'll do a John Carter from Mars now, because everything in the Flash Gordon would just hit me so much of like, oh, I could see this happening, or I could see Thuvia from Mars, or what, and sadly it never happened,
No, and they didn't do a Buck Rogers either, did they?
No, they did not. Like I said, they did New Adventures of Batman. They did all of which the animation in that was predominantly the same animation from the 60s Adventures of Batman and Robin. Of course, you had the Adventures of Superman, the Adventures of Superboy. You had Flash. You had the Atom. You had the Justice League of America that did not have Batman in it, or Robin, but
I remember those from the 60s. This was long before the Hall of Justice sort of thing.
Yeah, Green Lantern had his own Filmation cartoon. Of course,
Got
you
a couple
can't
of
forget
those.
the Archies and the Groovy Ghoulies and
Yep. Filmation did
Sabrina
those
the
as well.
Teenage Witch. And Filmation had a wonderful stable of cartoons that went on. And I know I'm missing a whole bunch.
Well, they did so much. It's hard to
Yeah.
remember them all. They did so many different things.
Hmm.
And it was very, very good.
And
Even the Archie series where the animation was not rotoscoping, it was more traditional
right.
cell animation. It was still it wasn't dumbed down for kids.
The
It
best
was,
things I would say about the rotoscoping, if you want the best examples, is watch the end run credits to Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle, and to the New Adventures of Batman, where it shows Tarzan swinging from tree to tree and jumping and flipping and that. And Batman is doing the same thing, but instead of
yeah,
swinging from a vine in the jungle, he's swinging from the bat rope throughout Gotham City and diving down and flipping around a flagpole and
yeah,
running
same
off,
thing.
jumping into the Batmobile and taking off, and the fluidity in that was just, at the time, was just marvelous. It
Yeah,
just, like, as a
if you
kid
were
or even as a teenager, and that I was just in awe from it.
yeah, if you didn't know what rotoscoping was, you would just absolutely fabricate,
Hmm.
yeah, fabricated that somebody could do this kind of fluid motion with animation.
And I think it highly influenced stuff that would come out later for Tolkien's The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings series, for heavy metal 2,
Mm-hmm.
which heavy metal was actually more, well, of course, all the stories from Heavy Metal magazine, but then when I see the different things in there, and particularly the little girl who's scared to death from this green glowing orb
Mm-hmm.
that is talking and getting ready to tell her this story, it reminds me of all the old horror comic books, prior to code,
Yeah.
comic code day time, all the
Well,
EG stuff and that.
who was it? Who was it? You said the Lord of the Rings, and there was a uh, Rankin Bass did the Hobbit, and then
Yeah,
Ralph Bakshi
Bashki, yeah.
came out with Lord of the Rings, and it did kind of cover Fellowship of the Ring, and it did kind of cover the Two Towers,
Mm.
or it skipped the Two Towers, and then there was a Return of the King. I can't remember the way it went. It's been so long.
And see, the thing is, I haven't read all the books. I
Mm.
am not a fan of the movies, of
Oh,
the more recent movies.
I'm sad
I
to hear that.
tried. I
I'm sad.
tried. I look at them as I would look at Harry Potter movies, and I absolutely not a fan of Harry Potter. But when, I will have to say, it was The Hobbit
Mm-hmm.
that came out, the Rankin Bass animated version of The Hobbit.
With Orson Bean doing the character.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That got my attention. That got me into the story, and that got me into reading the book. That was what did it. And I'm sure that the more current movies might have gotten, or at least I would hope that it would get the kids to read the books. If they were a fan of the movies, hey, look,
One can only hope. Yeah.
these these movies are sorely missing certain things that you can find right in this book, only if you crack it open and read it. And
And
which I know
there
with a lot of kids is asking too much, but
there were certain aspects that were invented rather than being part of the book.
right.
And I don't think, as much of a fan as I am of the written work, and I reread this stuff at least once a year, and I have since I was in high school. Uh, Matter of fact, there was once when I was babysitting my very young nieces up in East Tennessee, and we were outside, and they were bored to tears, and I started reciting The Hobbit to them,
Hmm.
and we got way into it. I mean, we got probably just past the trolls in Mirkwood, and then it was supper time, and I never got to finish the story for them. But when the movies came out, I hope that they recognized that from the story that I was telling them. And they're
Hmm.
all now grown with children of their own and grandchildren of their own.
Buy him copies of Leonard Nimoy's Bilbo Baggins song.
I don't think I will.
Which, by the way, speaking of Mr. Nimoy,
It's his birthday, isn't it? Or
it
was?
was would be, yes. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, Saturday. I
Hmm.
I did. I was trying to think. I thought I put up a bonus sketch
Yeah, you
that I
did.
did of Mr. Spock to for remembrance of his birthday, but I couldn't remember if I did it Friday or Saturday. But yeah, it was Saturday.
It would have been Saturday, yeah.
And another one, and I thought I have never drawn this person before, and I've been a big fan forever. But also the birthday of Elton John, who is still living,
Hmm.
and um, growing up, uh, just listening to virtually every Elton John album I could get my hands on in the mid 70s back in the day. I just
Good
turned
night,
around.
Cameron.
Good night. Thanks for coming.
Hey, really, I hope we've entertained you.
Yeah.
And I know you said quarter after you've got to go.
Yeah.
You got a busy day tomorrow, and I don't want to hold you up. Um, um,
Got a few
it's
things that are going to require an earlier rise, and
mm,
but not too early. But we're getting, because we took this weekend off and next weekend heading north again.
yeah,
There's some stuff I got to do, and I have a drawing to do too
yes,
for a
you do.
certain little guy up
Yes, you do.
there,
And
and which means I got to go out and buy another 8x10 frame from Walmart, which thankfully they're cheap enough.
yeah.
Same frames I put all this stuff in.
Oh, I've got an oil painting I need to do here in the next well, in the next few months. The fantasy novel I'm working on. Well, it may not be a novel. It may be
Mhm.
more of a novella, but I want to do the cover art for it for my publisher, and I have not done an oil painting in
Mm.
almost almost 20, going on 30 years has been the last time I actually got my brushes out and did something. I'm looking forward to actually doing, and I sincerely hope that my artist friends like yourself will look at it and go, I didn't know he could do that.
Well, I've already done that. And the one that always comes to mind is the Jimi Hendrix one that you did, and I
Mhm.
just think that's fabulous.
Yeah,
But
that was
so
one
I
of my.
have something to ask you. From one, I won't call myself a painter. I will call myself an illustrator, but I've never really been a good painter. But when I do something in full color, I use the alcohol base
Mhm.
like Copic or Azure paint markers. And something happened to me yesterday that I totally freaked out about, wondering if it ever happened to you. I do have a happy ending to this story, which I'll keep it in a Reader's Digest version, but I was working on a sketch that I'm actually going to post either tomorrow or Monday. I haven't made up my mind yet. I usually take a day off on Sundays, but day of rest. But in the process of doing this and adding the color, I had a piece of my Strathmore art paper that I had tore out from the pad, folded it over to check my colors from my paint markers to make sure it's the ones I want. Now I can do blending and everything else with these markers, but I still got to check to make sure that I'm pulling the right color. If it says blue number 7 or blue 12 or green 6 or whatever, my mind isn't that, oh yes, that's this type of green, that's a lime green or olive drab or whatever. And so I got to do a little mark on the folded over paper. I did this at the kitchen table. I had my mom's 30-something, 40-something year old red and white checkered tablecloth on the table, not thinking that I should have pulled that back before I started doing anything.
Oh my.
It went through 2 layers of this very thick mill Strathmore paper and a blue ink spot about yay big around, about big around as a 50-cent piece, right in the middle of this tablecloth. I'm freaking. I have a Tide stain pen that I was using and scrubbing, and it almost looked like it was pushing it out. Now this is a cotton tablecloth.
Yeah.
And then I went from there. I'm texting Laura, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I've done this, and I've got some Joy dishwashing liquid that I was scrubbing it with that. It faded it just a little bit, but the stain is really, really there still. And so she said, of course, she's the queen of Google. And she said, rubbing alcohol. So I go to get some rubbing alcohol to use that. It's fading it a little bit more, but it's not doing it. She says, well, you got to keep working at it. I worked at it all night last night till the time even after I got out of the green room last night, I went back, worked on it some more, and then I hung it up over the shower curtain to see what it was going to look like to dry, because I knew if I threw it in the washing machine in the community room and washed and dried it, whatever was there would set in.
Yes.
And I didn't want that to happen. Air drying is not going to set in a stain, but drying in a dryer will. And so finally today, I'm telling Laura, it's faded, but it's still there. I can still see it. And this was my mom's, and so that was a personal attachment. And yes, I shouldn't be attached to physical things, and that's not going to replace family, but it's just something I had, and I kept in really good shape for a long time.
It's a memento. Yes, it is.
Right. So she said, well, you have all these friends on Facebook. Post something on Facebook and see what you can find out. Well, I didn't want to do it just on my regular page and that, because it was kind of something more personal. I thought, well, I'm a member here in Oakwood. They have a Facebook group called Oakwood Residential Facebook News or something or other. But as predominantly to talk about stuff going on around in Oakwood, but people have asked about other things. Hey, who do you know that paints houses or whatever, or does
Yeah.
landscaping or shovels snow? So I put the question out there. So here's the answer. I'm jumping
That's
because
okay.
I realized my Reader's Digest version story is vastly becoming not that. Um, Out of all the suggestions I got, cheap hairspray, because cheap hairspray has the most alcohol in it. Spray it on both sides, let it set for about 5 minutes, and then scrub it with soap and water, whether it be dishwashing liquid or whatever. And the person who I know personally, she said, Bill, this is going to take you doing it a couple times to get it out entirely. So, as you can imagine, off and on throughout the day, I'm going in the kitchen and scrubbing, scrubbing, scrubbing. And it's getting a little more faded, a little more faded, but I can still see it. I can still see it. And finally, after about the fourth time of doing it, I totally got the whole stain out.
Oh,
And
good.
I took a picture thinking maybe I'm not seeing it, but it's still there. And I sent that to Laura in text, and she says, I don't see anything. It did good. So yes, people, cheap hairspray will get permanent marker or ink out of a cotton tablecloth.
Yeah, it takes some work. Um,
Now, oil paint, such as you're going to use, I'm not sure. That would be a little
oh
bit
no,
more
oh
different.
no, no. I will be using a. I'm not sure if it'll be a stretched canvas or it'll be a canvas covered board.
Oh, okay.
Hard. I'm not sure. It's not going to bleed through either way. The stretched canvas would be, you know, half an inch off of whatever surface that I was
Sure.
using,
Yeah.
or the board will be, impermeable. If anything soaks through to the other side, I'm using the wrong kind of paint. Um,
Now, once you do this painting, and I
mhm.
know you're doing it as to be used as cover art, um, how are you going to transfer that to digital? I mean, are you just going to have to take a photograph? Is there actually a good way of doing it that
Okay. Once the once the paint has had time to totally dry,
mhm.
I could put it on a scanner.
Oh, okay.
It might not pick up all the color 100% correctly.
Right. All the
Be-
pigments and
Yeah, it's going into the computer. The computer's got a limited palette. It's not like my eye that has an unlimited
right.
palette. Or I could set it up with some good lighting and take a photograph of it with a decent camera without using a flash.
Mhm.
And those are the two best ways to transfer something from an actual painting to digital,
Mhm.
because I can't, for what I want to do, I'm not proficient enough with digital art programs to be able to do it. My niece could do it, but I want to do the painting myself.
Right.
Uh,
Right. And that's the same way with me with what I do. And
yeah,
I've played with digital illustrating, and um, it's going to take a long time for me to get the hang of it to be able to do with it what I do freehand with
yeah.
traditional.
There are art tablets like an iPad, a big iPad that is
Mhm.
made just to draw on, and
Mhm.
you use a stylus the same way you would use a pen or a
Mhm.
paintbrush, and you've got You can actually mix the colors that you need for this line and that line and another line. I'm not going to buy a huge expensive drawing tablet to
Right.
to be able to do this digitally. Some people I know already have the gear
hmm
or could do it with a mouse. I can't do that.
Well,
My
yeah,
talent
they
or but
typically you could have it just buying the program, and you could use your laptop or a tablet or anything. It
mhm.
doesn't have to be for that. I know I've had conversations with Luke Stone about this, and uh, a lot of their stuff that from the, I think I'm going to butcher this, but I think that was called Starcross Comic Company that they
Okay.
were involved in for a while. And anyway, um, they did theirs digital, and I know. I mean, it's on my bucket list. I I
Yeah,
I don't want to be left out, but I would say that even if I got the hang of it, hell, even if I got really good at it, I think that probably 75% of what I'll still produce traditionally as
mhm.
opposed to digitally. Only because that's what I like. I think there are certain things, if you get original piece from somebody, well, yeah, you can get original digital piece, but then, well, but it's so different. Well, it would be like saying, "Hey Dan, I want to buy one of your oil paintings, but I want to buy it digitally." And you could have the perfect digital reproduction of what you had, but not actually having the original piece in your hand and feeling the textures and seeing every last little pigment, every little brush stroke. I just don't think you're going to see that on the digital end of it as you would traditionally having that oil painting in your hand and
Yeah, yep. And
and
now
studying it. And I know a lot of people study paintings closely, and they look for it's they're a connoisseur of of studying a painting as much as somebody's a connoisseur of wine tasting or cigar tasting or whatever, you know.
and my point of view is it'll be a whole lot quicker for me to just pick up the paintbrush and do it than it would be for me to learn a new program.
Well, I will be anxious to see what you come up with, and because I know the some of the other stuff that I saw that you have posted on Facebook, and that was exceptionally wonderful. And once again, I go back to the Hendrix one, and all I could say was, "Wow!" I mean that was, and and I'm not saying that's the only one because it's not, but that's the one I just kind of keep going back to the reference and that. So,
That's one of the better ones that
mhm.
really is. And believe it or not, that was a colorized reproduction of a sepia tone album cover.
Okay.
So I reproduced the drawing of Hendrix, but that was sepia tone. The
hmm
bird on the album cover was full color.
hmm
That was the only color on the album cover. So the rest of it, I had to go through, and I had never seen the actual photograph of Jimmy at Woodstock that drawing, the album
Right.
cover drawing was made from. I have since seen the actual photograph. Some of my colors were not accurate to the color photograph from Woodstock, but I didn't know that at the time. But they were exceptionally close So I'm very proud of that one. I am very proud of that one. And the little bird itself, that was one of the most demanding bits of how can I mix this color with this paint
Mm-hmm.
palette that I've got here without going out and buying $10 million worth of other paint colors, and just getting it done, and the actual texture of the feathers and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and believe it or not, that entire painting from a blank piece of poster board to finished and allowed to dry was 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would have thought 3 weeks.
Nope. I was on vacation. I had nothing better to do with my time. I got up every morning. I drank a pot of coffee. I got the paintbrushes out, and because it's oil paint, it was still blendable. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't totally dry, even after I slept all night. So go back in, do this, go back in, do this, go back in. Oh, I need the tiny brush for here.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, I did the best job I could. And that's the the skin coloration, the light and dark, the shadows and everything on Hendrix himself. That is the best, most realistic human being that I have ever been able to paint. Um, I have done other portraits of people that were far less successful in my point of view as oh, I could have done that better. Oh, that doesn't look good. Other people
Mm-hmm.
rant and rave about it, and I go, no, why couldn't I did it the same way I did Jimmy? But
Well, we all have our good days and bad days,
I was having a
and I,
good week. Let me tell you, I was having a
yeah.
real good week that week.
And the
Uh,
thing about it is, and I know a lot of people won't understand this, that when you're working on whether it be a commission or just something that you're doing for yourself or for one of your books or whatever, you have a kind of a setting time
mhm.
to where you're able to work for so long. And either if your eyes start to get tired, maybe your hands or might be getting a little shaky. You might be getting, you feel like you need to step away from it for a while, come back to it. And that I, my sittings vary immensely. If I'm doing a quick um, daily sketch, as long as it's not too entirely involved, which this Frank Miller Dark Knight one that I'm going to post was
Yeah,
a little more involved, but not that bad. But most of them I can knock out in about an hour and from start to finish.
yeah,
This Frank Miller one that I did went longer, and that's simply just because I wasn't quite certain what I was going to do with it, with the color afterwards. But one thing I did know, I got that damn tablecloth off the table before I messed with it.
really.
You know,
You,
well,
you
my
you're
my
not you're not going to make that mistake again.
my my computer desk, which originally was supposed to also be my art desk, has got way too cluttered with computer things and stuff, and even toys too, but not too much on that extent, thankfully. But so I can't really, where I got the nice light with the on the arm and other things that could be easily accessible. I've gone back to sitting at the kitchen table, at least for the time being. There's some stuff that I'm just going to say, okay, it was nice to have it out here on the computer desk for a while, but I got to condense because I have to utilize this desk for the other purpose.
Yeah.
And deal with that. But
Okay.
I do need to buggy.
Well, let me share this so anybody watching this later will know exactly what painting we were talking about.
All right. Yep. There you go.
Now I have since found out that the headband, the scarf there around his head was red rather than yellow.
Oh, okay.
And
But
then,
that's all right because it's your interpretation of it, though.
well, I had only a black and white photo basically to go by, and um, other than that, it's very very close to the actual photograph. So I'm very proud of this one, and I'm very glad that you enjoy it as well.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
and it's just that that was a period in time where I had vacation weeks that I would take, and I would do nothing but oil paintings. That was before I ever started writing music. That was before I ever started writing stories. And this was my artistic outlet, was doing paintings, and that was a piece that I really really just I enjoyed it. I concentrated on it exclusively for that limited period that it took. And my oldest stepson says, "I want that. That is my inheritance." Okay. So my wife and I have already agreed.
Put a little tag on the back with his name on it. And
no, all Sean gets that. Yeah, that one's promised.
be like Donna with all her cobalt glass collection. She was, when I was over there, she's showing me starting to write things, and this is going to this niece, and this is going to this one, and on and
Yeah.
on.
Yep.
So they don't fight over it. And I said, well, you better put it in a will too, and not just tags inside the glassware.
Yeah, that's the thing. Lindsay and I have been seriously discussing. I am of the age where it would be a good idea to make out a will. I can't guarantee that some idiot driver will not run into me when I'm on my way to work the day before I retire. It's just it would be prudent to go ahead and plan ahead, basically.
And it's like when my time comes and the Lord calls me home, anybody who has any of my stuff, I hope they look back fondly on it. And that I don't know that they're ever going to get rich off of any of my illustrations and that, but I've doled out a lot of stuff as gifts and different little tokens of appreciation for certain things over the years that I know they're out there everywhere now. And that's not even talking about the commission work and that I've done for a lot of people, but when I go, I know Laura will probably have a lot to deal with with a lot of my stuff. She'll probably look and say, "Oh, good grief, I forgot he had all those toys."
Well, look at it this way: you do have a legacy.
Yeah, but
you're gonna have to give it to somebody.
and at some point, I know I'm going to have to get a will together, a living will.
Mm-hmm.
and that I don't want anybody to go through it because um, they're my adoptive family and that, and as far as burial expenses and all that, that'll all be covered. They won't have to worry about that. But it's just, you think about, oh, geez, somebody left contents. Well, through the years, I have sometimes wantingly and sometimes unwantingly condensed. I'm trying to live a little bit more simply, and where, yes, I still like to occasionally buy this or that might bring some little brief period of joy to me or whatever, or even buying something to turn around to sell too. But I don't know, just getting into that end, I see where Laura and some other friends of mine who do that selling, that can get to be a full-time gig, sometimes whether you want it to be or not. So
Yep.
I'm just going to say, what I have and what I buy is typically going to be for me, and I'm not buying to resell something and that. And so when my time comes and it gets distributed out to my nieces or my nephews or, whoever, my little sister Jenny, and and of course Laura, I'll have that all figured out, and I kind of in my head know who would want what because of what they like or what they do, and and who, and Jenny's going through the same kind of reducing her material possessions as well too.
That would be incredibly hard for me because I've got so much stuff. I mean, it'd be easy to go through my clothes. I
Mm-hmm,
well, look at my background photo. How am I going
mm-hmm.
to thin down my? I've got thousands of paperback books, thousands and thousands. Um, I've been buying books since I was a child, and I've got every single one of them, almost every single one of them that I've ever bought, except for the ones that disappeared during my divorce from my first wife.
Mm-hmm.
And a
I've
lot
gotten
of
rid of thousands of paperback
I can't
books.
do it. I can't do it because I still go back and pull something off the shelf and reread it.
Mm.
I've
My
been
problem is I hardly have the time to read anything at leisure, something that I want to either reread or something new to read. And of course, the last book I read was Keisha Acuff's book.
Mhm.
Get through, and I still have not been able to get on Amazon to leave that review. They have continuously screwed me on the password to get in there to log in, just to leave a stupid review. And I've changed the password. I've gotten in there, and then all of a sudden they don't recognize the changed password.
Yeah, um, they get stupid that way sometimes, and
Yeah, and I
it's
feel bad about it
not
because
it's
I've.
not the people, it's the program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I hate to say that, but that's just the way it is.
So being that I can't do that, I found other ways to promote her book and that, and same with others, and
Mm.
I continue to do that. But
Bill,
um,
I have kept you up for an extra 30 minutes now from the time you said you needed to go to bed.
yeah,
And don't make me feel
yeah, and I do
guilty.
need to back out. And I guess we'll just have this conversation maybe next Thursday night.
Hey, we can have it anytime. I can even do a
Yep,
special show. I
yep.
do have ops here. I can schedule something.
Sadly, I don't. I was going to, but of course that whole thing fell through, and when
Well,
someone decided to act the way they shouldn't, and but that just is what it is, and
uh,
it will not be. I'm a little heartbroken because I did want to learn all that stuff, and I was kind of playing with what I was going to do on that other program, and thought, oh, okay, well, I'll get things set up and be able to not really be professional at it, but just have it be a learning experience for every show as go along. But like I said, it wasn't meant to be, and I'm
well,
okay with sitting back, being the guy sitting here just mouthing off every once in a while about things I know and things I don't know.
uh, talk to Joe Dog. I mean, as a learning experience, it wouldn't be that difficult. You just have to adjust to um, borrowing somebody else's account, and it would let you learn the ins and outs of StreamYard and get a glimpse into the backstage stuff that you don't see being a guest
Mm,
commentator. And it, it's as far as the mechanics of it are, it's easy to do, but there are complicated bits that, while they're easy to do, they're in an arrangement that might be hard to remember exactly every step
mm.
of the way. So it's kind of like cooking. You
Well,
you start off with a recipe, but by the time that you're trying to do it from memory instead of from a written
mhm.
list, that's kind of the point where I'm at, where I don't have the written list anymore. I'm trying to remember how to do all of it. And
Yeah, I think I would have to write it down for a while too. And but I know that repetition will help me remember.
yes, it will.
That's how I was going to have the other plan. But yeah, well, if you talk to Joe Dog before I do, say something and what have you. If not, and or if he's not liking of it, I'm fine with it either way.
Well,
My my
just go ahead and broach the subject to him and tell him you'd like to learn it in case you wanted to do your own Bill Sarton art show.
Oh God, I don't know about that, but
Hey, who thought that I would have my own here? I mean, uh, the main reason I've got Last Man Standing is that we got used to, during the lockdown, we got used to doing the after show that wasn't
mm,
recorded. And then all of a sudden, Joe and John were going to bed like sane people, and I wanted to stay up all night. So,
well, and this with me, the only reason why I would ever like to have some controls, if we're talking about a certain something, um, the way we were talking earlier tonight about all the old time
mhm.
radio shows and different things and that, and the way John can pull up a certain related photo or
Yeah,
partial of an article or something, to do something like that, or
yeah, or like I just did with the Hendrix painting.
right,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I can pull up, hey, this is what I did today, and this is, it was Leonard Nimoy's birthday, so this is what I
well,
did, whatever.
even as a guest, you might be able to use the share screen function.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever.
Well, if you can see it down there at the bottom of the screen.
And yeah, I don't see, I have the mute stop cam settings. Oh,
Share.
there is a share. Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. It gets a little clumsy, but what you do is on your browser that you got the show going on. You pull
Mhm.
up another tab and you pull up whatever it is you want to share, and then you hit share and you select that tab on your browser and click on share screen. Then you've got to go back to this window, and there's a little pop up here, like your picture and my picture at the bottom, where we're both talking to each other, and it'll have a third picture of what you want to share. And you click on add to screen or add to stream, and it
Oh
pops
wow.
up there. Yeah, it, like I said, it's clumsy, but you
Hmm.
get used to it. It's kind of like backing up to go forward. It's like making a 3 point turn on.
Well, it yeah, it's and once again, repetition will
Yep.
is my best friend
Hmm.
on
But
that. But on
yeah,
that note, um, I will go ahead and let you go. And I do need to wind things down. I got a few things here to do before my head hits that pillow over there.
hey,
And
you've got a busy day. Make sure your head hits the pillow as soon as possible. Okay.
well, yeah, and I don't have to get up super early the way I'm going to have to next Sunday. So I apologize in advance for not
That
being able to get on that
that's
show.
all
But
right, Bill. That's all right. I
um,
understand commitments.
yeah,
Yeah.
and this is periodic and that, but I thoroughly enjoy the show and everybody on both of the shows, and so I try to make myself available when other people are not willing or not able to make themselves available.
Well, it's
And
okay.
everybody has their own little, they have their life outside of stupid o'clock and last man standing, and that's, you know, unfortunately well, not say unfortunately, but fortunately, because it is, I feel, well, maybe even fortunate may not be the word, but blessed that I do have a life and people to care about, and that some that are going to be heavily relying on me the next few months. And while other things are going on, and like I said, as much as I want to crawl underneath the sheets and in a fetal position and hide from the world, I know I can't do that. I have a job to do now, and I have some people relying on me, and it's actually, as scary as it is, it's actually a good feeling because it's the first time somebody had to rely on me in quite a while,
Hey,
because everybody else I've lost already. So,
yeah, I know how that goes. I
but
really do.
I hope you have a good rest of your weekend.
I certainly hope everything goes swimmingly. I've got to
Yep.
finish mowing the backyard tomorrow and pretty much just work around the house. And
Hmm.
I've got that little bit of editing I have to do, and
Yep.
then turn that book over to the publisher and wait for the editing crew to come back with corrections, suggestions, and critiques. And then after that, we will see what we can see.
Yep.
And it'll be on to finishing up the fantasy story and then doing the cover artwork, which I'm really looking forward to doing that painting. I
Mm.
am. I have been wanting to finish this particular story for quite some time. I know exactly what I did wrong to stall myself out, and I don't ever want to do that again. Everything was going fine, and then I made a mistake and tried to make it fit to a formula, and the characters stopped talking to me. So I'm gonna make peace with them and get the voices in my head to start talking to me again.
Yep.
After that, I've got other stuff I've got to to really tackle full time. I'm not going to have very many excuses to uh, not be turning out stuff to a deadline. So that's going to be a novel experience because basically I do not do things to deadlines because I start when I start, I end when I end, and okay, I've got to turn this in, I've got to turn this in, I've got to turn this in. That's going to be a new experience for me. So I'll just adapt and do it. I mean, no excuse, just do it.
Mhm.
So, mm. Well, and we have gone pretty much the whole 2 hours. So,
Yeah. Well, but I hope uh, you're able to accomplish everything that you want to and that you need to. And we will see you Thursday night.
all right. And
And
thank you very much for being here. And thank
well,
you very much for an excellent
thank you
conversation.
for allowing me to be here.
It's
And
my pleasure.
but and anybody else out there via Candios. And we will see you all soon.
Good night, Bill.
Good night.
And just, I'm going to try an experiment here just to see if it works. But I will. Okay, this is a short one. Good. We will try and get this, and hopefully, yes. Okay. Um, let's just see if I can pull this little thing off, but it may be something that I can do. It may not, but we'll give it a try here. Let me go ahead and add this to stream, and since it's not got a very active visual to go with it, and then I will try and see if it will go. And I'll have to watch the playback to see if it actually works. Well, that was an experiment. I don't know if it actually worked or not, and I won't know until I do a replay of this and see whether or not it came out on audio as well as the share the video screen. If so, then I have an alternative for um, if there is a time when there is a last man standing scheduled and no one is able to appear but me, then I can go to my uh, Bandcamp page and kind of DJ uh, some of my music. And we will see if that came out. And I will have to end the show and then go back to YouTube and play the video and skip forward to the end and see whether or not it actually came out the way I intended it to, or whether you just got to sit here and watch me grin like an idiot in total silence for 2 minutes and 40 seconds or however long the song lasted. And yeah, either way, it was an experiment. We'll see whether or not it worked. Some of the most exciting experiments are the ones that go, that was unexpected. So here we are, there we were, and here we go. Let's say goodnight, everybody. Good night, everybody.